Good morning to all of you. Today we are going to talk about a very important part of your syllabus. All of you are preparing for UPSC mains, civil services exam. So today first of all we will talk about for some time a very important part of your syllabus, that is GS paper 4. That is ethics and integrity. So sometimes I would like to talk about what exactly ethics and integrity is. How is it that ethics and integrity differs from the other topics, other subjects that you study, whether in your academic life earlier or in the preparation of the UPSC exam. We will also see that how important ethics can be for your preparation for the UPSC. Why is it that you should bother a lot about this paper? And what role can this paper play in your examination, in your success in the UPSC exam? We will also talk about at the end of it that how can we score very good marks in ethics? What are the requirements that you can have, you need to have in order to score very well in ethics? And finally, we will also talk about that what I propose to do for you people for can say ethics and integrity here in these classes here. So let's start doing all of these things in some detail here. First of all, now if you look at it, the syllabus of UPSC mains exam as of now, then syllabus of UPSC main exam as of now today has these following things again. First of all, you have to choose one optional paper. Earlier there were two optional papers, now we have only one optional paper. Then after you have an essay paper. Then after we have GS paper 1, GS paper 2, GS paper 3, and finally our part, that is GS paper 4. So as of now, you have to write these many papers, these many things again that you have to prepare for, you have to write. Now, if you look at the syllabus of all these things in some detail, in some you can say depth and all, then you may possibly realize that these 5 parts of your syllabus are more or less similar in one way that we are going to talk about. They are very different subjects. Again, you have to study history, geography, polity, etc., etc. But in one important way, these 5 parts of your syllabus, your examination will be very much similar to each other. Why are they similar to each other? Because in all of them, the UPSC tries to measure the content of your knowledge. Content of your knowledge. So how much knowledge you have. The focus of these papers will be, as we will see here, that how much you know. Focus of these papers will be how much you know, how much amount, how much you can say information that you have, and how much you have learned about the world in general. Knowledge again. If you look at knowledge, then this knowledge is not about the self again. This knowledge that you are expected to have in this paper is the knowledge of the external world outside you. So UPSC expects you to be aware of the world that you are living in, every aspect of the world, every aspect of the society that you are living in. So in these papers you have to study, you can say one technical knowledge, of course that is the paper, optional paper. Then after you have to study almost everything, history, geography. So in history you are going to talk about the past, what happened, how the past had shaped our present in a way. In polity you have to talk about the political system that we operate inside. Economy again, economic system that we work in. So geography again, the whole of geography, the structure of the world that we are actually, physical geography and other parts of the geography and all. So in these things again, in these papers, you will realize that your knowledge is basically about the external world, and focus will be on the how much, focus will be on the quantity of knowledge, the amount of knowledge that you have gathered for the last 15 years of your academic life. So all of you must have gone through 15 years of your academic life, school, college. All of you must be at least a graduate. So during these 15 years of academia that you have actually spent in, how much information about the world you have gathered. So these papers will be about that knowledge. From this point of view, as you will see shortly, ethics is very, very different. Because ethics is not essentially about how much knowledge you have. The ethics is not also about, content of your knowledge. It's not about how much, more than how much knowledge you have. Ethics is essentially about who you are. Who you are, rather than how much you know. So focus, as you can appreciate from these two important questions, that how much you know and who you are. In ethics paper, focus will always be on you. You as an individual. You as an individual. So what UPSC is interested in in this part of your syllabus is that during the last 21 years, all of you have gone through at least 21 years of your life. All of you must be 21 years of age again. So during those 21 years of your life, what type of individual you have grown into, what type of person you have become. So that is the main focus of the ethics and integrity. We'll see in some later class when we have our course here starting, then we will talk about the meaning of the term individual. What is the meaning of the term individual? Because being an individual, as we will see in the main course that we will be having, being an individual is perhaps the most important achievement of the human mind. No other animal can become an individual. We are the only animal, we can say, or species, we can see, who are capable of being an individual. So in this part again, UPSC will be interested in understanding what type of individual you are, what type of person you have grown into. So that is the main focus, and that is one way that ethics is different from everything else. We'll see some other differences also shortly. Now, next important question comes here is that how do you understand the type of individual? How do I know, for example, that what type of individual you are? How do I know? How does UPSC know that what type of person you are? Now, when we look at the human being, that the best way to understand a human being, the easiest way, the best, most efficient way to understand a human being is that present a person, a human being, with certain problems. Present an individual with certain problems and just look at it, how does that person solve the problem? Because as in our life again, as we know that we face many different problems in our life again, sometimes personal life problems, sometimes family problems, sometimes social problem, sometimes the academic problem inside the classroom again, academic life problems, sometimes later on once you will start a profession, a job, then you will have some professional problem as well, problem in your job. So we, in different domains of our life, in different areas of our life, we often face certain problems. Now, how do you look at that problem? How do you solve that problem? Perhaps can give us the most important information about what type of individual you are. Because when we are not having any problem, everything is going well, everything is hunky-dory, then, well, all of us are same. We enjoy together. We enjoy, while you can say, looking at the good things in the life, we all are similar, we all are same. We become different when we face some problems. Because when problems come up, any type of problem, again, problem of a personal life or academic life or the professional life or social life, neighborhood, etc. So whenever we face some problem, then our individuality comes out again, because same problem, different people encounter differently. Same problem happens and different people look at that problem very differently. They have different way of understanding, looking at the same problem. So some people take problem as a can say difficulty to handle again. They get bogged down by these problems of life. Life is full of the problems. We'll talk a lot about these problems in ethics paper. So life is full of the problems. So some people, again, they become bogged down by the problems of life. They become disturbed by the problems of life. On the other hand, there are some people who take the problem as a challenge. They take the problems of life as a way, as a stepping stone to move higher, to move, can say, become better and better. So how do you look at the problems of your life? That is one of the best way to understand what type of person you are. And this is exactly what UPSC will be doing. So in your exam, if you look at the question paper of previous year's exam, then you will appreciate that they will, almost half of your question will be about those problems only. So out of 250 words, at least 250 marks, at least 20 or so, 120, 125 marks will be about these problems. So UPSC will also present you with certain problems. Of course, they call these problems as the case studies. So they call these problems as the case studies. So they will present you with certain problems, certain case studies, and then after they will ask you that if you find yourself in that particular situation, then how do you respond to that? So then after, well, you will have to write 250 words about that situation again. How do you look at that situation? How do you analyze that situation? What are the important points that you see in that situation, a problematic situation? And finally, how do you respond to that situation? So you are asked to respond to all these things. And on the way you respond to these things, UPSC will get some very crucial information about what type of individual you are. So the way you look at this problem, your perspective, your point of view about this problem, your approach toward this problem, your solution toward this problem, these are something that will give a very, very important information to the UPSC about what type of individual you are. This is exactly what they are going to do. from this point of view, I personally believe that this paper, ethics paper, is much closer to the interview rather than to written exam. So I believe that last time when they changed the syllabus again, or they changed the whole pattern of UPSC exam in 2013, then they divided, you can say, interview into two parts: written part of the interview and the oral part of the interview. Oral part is still there, and written part of the interview has become the ethics paper. So this paper is much closer to the interview rather than the other sections of your written exam. That is one of the major difference about, you can say, in the ethics paper and other papers. So in this paper, as we'll see in much detail, that focus is always on you. What type of person you are, what type of life you are living, what is your idea of a good life, what is your idea of a good professional, a successful person. So all of these things are something that is important subject matter of this paper, this, you can say, ethics and integrity, GS paper 4. So that is one important way that ethics differs from all other papers. Now, this difference that we have talked about here, it leads to another important difference as well. And the second difference is that in ethics, in other paper, if you look at it, since other paper is about the amount of knowledge, content of your knowledge, quantity of your knowledge, so in other paper you have to study a lot. Of course, you have to study a lot because you have to gather lots and lots of information. So you have to study a lot. You have to study a huge amount of things, large number of books and all. From this point of view also, you will see that ethics is very different from other paper, because ethics, since it is about you as an individual, so it does not require you to study a lot. You don't have to study a lot. In this paper, at the end of it, I will suggest you, I will recommend you that you are not, you can say, expected to read virtually any book. I will not recommend virtually any book in that case. Some study material may be required for some small part of your syllabus, that we will see at the end of it. But for most of your syllabus, you are not expected to, you can say, read any books and all. Without reading a book also, because it is about you, and you know yourself well. Everybody, we claim, all of us, that we know, I know myself well, you know yourself well. That's one of the very, very important aspect of the human being. So, in this case again, so you know yourself well, you know about life. You all have, if you have lived 21 years of a satisfactory life, all of you must be at least 21 years of age. That is minimum age limit of UPSC exam. So if you have lived 21 years of life, and during these 21 years, if you have more or less satisfactory life, if you have, you can say, a good relationship in your family, with your friends, in your academics, etc., and you are able to mix up with other people, if you are able to adjust with the other people around you, then to a great extent, you know yourself well. So, in ethics, another beautiful thing about ethics is that ethics does not require lots of preparation. It does not require lots of study. So, without any study also, you can possibly write the answer to these questions. Just look at the question paper of ethics in the previous years. You will see that most of these questions in the examination, almost any educated person can answer. For example, there was a question a few years ago that what is the meaning of, different people aspire happiness. Everybody aspires for happiness. What is the meaning of happiness for you? Now, happiness, who does not want to be happy? We all want to be happy in our life. And if you want to be happy in your life, then you already have some conception of happiness. You must have some idea in your mind that what is the meaning of happiness for you. So that is about now normal thing. Everybody knows about that. So there are many such questions we can find in the previous year's examination, where you will find that they ask the questions about such real life again that almost everybody is aware of that, more or less. So if you take this question paper, UPSC question paper, and you give it to any educated person, give this question paper to your parents, for example, your brothers, your elders, your uncle, your grandfather, any educated person, and ask them that can you write the answer of these questions, almost anybody will say that yes, more or less I can write the answer of these questions. That will not be true for other paper. So very few people would be able to write the answer to the history, geography, or science and technology. But ethics is something that most of the people, any educated person, would be able to write the answer of that question. That is one important difference between ethics and other paper. This gives an impression to many people, I will say that misimpression, this gives an illusion to some people that ethics does not require much study, because everybody knows about ethics. Who does not know ethics again? So everybody knows about ethics. This is how we normally understand. Many people say so. So they often take ethics very lightly. That everybody knows about it. I am aware of the questions again. I can write the question without, can say, reading something or without it in a classroom also. So many people have this misconception that ethics is easy to prepare. Ethics does not require any preparation as such. But here we will see that it becomes a major problem. Why major problem? Because ethics is one paper where it may possibly happen. It may be possible. I have seen many of my students, when they come out of the examination hall, then they are very happy. They tell me, okay, sir, I have performed very well. So I'm going to score very good marks, very happy, very satisfied, very content with their answers and all. But when the actual marks come up, then many of them get as less as 25 marks. In ethics, it is out of 250, 25 marks out of 250. That is very much likely in ethics. Think of it. In other paper, if you are writing mains exam, if you have cleared your prelims exam, then it's very unlikely that in polity or history or geography, etc., you will get as less as that. No other paper will give you that less marks. So in ethics, it is possible that in spite of preparing, in spite of being satisfied with the answer, in spite of attempting all the answers, still people get as less as 25 out of 250. I have seen many students like that. So from this point of view, ethics may be very difficult also. We'll see the difficulty again shortly. But there is a good thing about ethics is that if you prepare ethics well, if you prepare ethics appropriately, clearly again, and from the point of view of the UPSC exam, or the way an administrator, a civil servant has to look at the problems of real life, then it is possible that in ethics you can get as much as 150 marks. Many of my students have got that much also. No other paper can give you that much marks. However well you prepare in your history, geography or polity, etc., it is next to impossible that you will get that much marks. So in ethics, that is not only possible, but it is very easy to do also, as we will see shortly. So that's another beautiful thing about ethics, that if you study well, if you prepare ethics well, then you can get very good marks in ethics. So, but for that you have to be a little conscious, you'll have to be a little aware, you have to understand that how to understand ethical issues and all, and how to answer those ethical issues appropriately. So, if you are not able to do that, then, well, people get that much also. So I believe that the range of marks that people get, range of marks, minimum to maximum, is perhaps widest in ethics. No paper can give you that less, and no paper can give you that much also. So that is one important thing, that ethics makes ethics different from the other papers that you have to prepare. So our ultimate goal in this case would be, of course, to move from this to that. How much you can move from the left side to the right side to of this scale of marks again. But remember that extremes are possible in ethics. In other paper, that extreme is not possible. Even if you can say you are not so well prepared, then also in your polity or in your economics, etc., you might get some respectable marks, 60, 70, 80 or 100 or so. But in ethics, it is possible that you can get that less marks, and that too after writing everything. That too after, you can say, attempting virtually all the questions and all. That is another important thing about ethics. Now, this further leads us to the third important difference between ethics and the other papers. Because in, you can say, other paper, as I told you earlier, that in order to score very good marks, we have to study a lot. Many books have to study. Not only you have to study a lot, but you have to keep yourself updated also. You have to keep yourself update also. For example, suppose your economics classes are over, your economics is complete, and budget comes, economic survey comes again, then you have to read the whole budget once again. You cannot say that your preparation is complete now. So in every other subject, whenever something new happens in the society, then it is your, you can say, requirement that you have to study that new change also. In ethics, as you will see, that is not required, because in ethics, once your preparation is over, then after it is over once and for all. You don't have to keep yourself updated about the new things, because understanding of ethics is enough. You don't have to prepare yourself too much in ethics in general, because ethical questions, it is very important to understand further that ethical questions do not change normally. Ethical questions do not, you can say, change. Ethical questions remain same throughout. The life does not change that much. World changes, but individual life, human life does not change that much. And the problems of life also do not change that much. Ethical questions do not change, but more importantly, ethical answers also do not change. Think of it. Also 2500 years ago, Buddha in India was asking a very important ethical question. What was that question? I hope that all of you are aware of that. So almost 2500 years ago, Buddha was asking this question, that why do people suffer? Why do we suffer? And how can we eliminate suffering? And how can we become happy? So he was asking the same question almost 2500 years ago. Are we not asking the same question today also? That why do we suffer? How to eliminate suffering? How can we be happy? How can we lead a good life and all? So you can see that the same questions remain same. At the 2500 years ago, the same question was being asked by the philosophers, and today also we are asking the same question. Questions do not change. But most importantly and most beautifully, I would say that ethical questions, to ethical questions, even answers do not change. So what Buddha said 2500 years ago, what answer he gave to that question again, that why do people suffer, how can we eliminate suffering, what is the source of suffering, what is the cause of suffering, and how can we become happy. So whatever answer Buddha gave almost 2500 years ago, those answers are even now as valid as it was then. Ethical questions do not change, ethical answers do not change. So Buddha was asking the question that is valid today, and Buddha was giving the answer that is equally valid today. Almost 2500 years ago in Europe, in ancient Greece, Socrates was asking certain questions. Aristotle was asking certain important questions about life. What is the meaning of a good life? How to live a good life? Aristotle was asking the same question, and we are asking the same question today also. And Aristotle gave an answer then, those answers are valid even today also. Those answers have not changed. In other subject, questions also have changed. Answers also have changed. So Aristotle, for example, you must have heard the name of Aristotle. One of the very, very influential, you can say, ancient philosopher in the Western world. So Aristotle gave a theory of physics also, chemistry also. He asked the questions about physics and chemistry as well. And he gave the answer to those physical questions and chemistry questions also today, but we are not bothered about neither his questions nor his answers. So in physics and chemistry or mathematics, you don't study Aristotle, but in ethics we study Aristotle even today, because the ethical questions do not change and ethical answers also do not change. So what question he asked then in ancient Greece are valid today also, and what answer he gave then are valid even today also. So ethical questions do not change. Because of that reason, you know that you don't have to, you can say, repeat yourself, you don't have to revise yourself. Once you understand the ethical ideas, once you understand the most core of the ethical ideas, then after you will see that virtually any answer that UPSC can ask in UPSC exam. It is not about one or two questions or one or two answers. Virtually any question that they can ask, you should be able to answer those questions again. So that is how we can say ethics differs from other people. It does not require lots of effort. It does not require lots of labor. It does not require lots of study, lots of books, etc., etc. Just a little of understanding and a lot of thinking. We'll talk about that thinking shortly. What is the meaning of thinking and how important thinking is in ethics in general? So ethics requires a little of understanding and lots of thinking about your life, about the life of the people around you in general, your society and your neighborhood or your relatives, your family members, etc. So ethics does not require much study. Ethics does not require much knowledge. Ethics does not require much updation, much repetition, much adding to the amount of, you can say, knowledge that you have about the good life. So there is another important thing about ethics that you need to understand. Further, next important thing about ethics is that makes it different from the other paper, that since, as I told you, that ethics is about you as an individual, me as an individual, and you as an individual. So in ethics, we can, everything that you study in ethics, we can become our own subject matter of a study. We can study ourselves, who we are, what type of person we are. So ethics will open up your eyes again, as you will see in these classes again. It will give you some very interesting and important insight about you, that what type of person you are. You will be surprised to know that what you actually do and what you should be doing in the case, if you understand ethics appropriately the way we will be discussing in our class here. So it will give a very important insight about you. It will help you to understand yourself in a better manner. Because of that, I feel that ethics, one thing that makes ethics different from other paper is also that in other paper, you know, you have to study about the external worlds in general, but in ethics or other paper are relevant only for the examination purpose. So if you study polity, for example, then polity is important only for your examination purpose. You clear the exam and then after most of that will be redundant after that. But ethics is not only for examination purpose. I believe that the beauty of ethics, importance of ethics is that of course ethics can play the most important role in your success. Be sure about that, because in ethics you can get the maximum marks. No other paper can give you that much marks. Many people have got 150, 155, 160 marks also in ethics out of 250, as I told you earlier. So ethics will play a very important role in your success in the UPSC exam. There is no doubt about that. Not only a very important role, perhaps the most important role. If you study ethics well, then after, well, it will compensate other paper also somehow again. It will give maximum marks, 20, 25 marks easily you can get, you can say, extra over the other paper. So ethics will play a very important role in your life, in your success in your exam also. So one important point of ethics is that ethics helps you to clear your UPSC exam in a much better manner, much easily you can say in that case, if you understand ethics in appropriate manner. But importance of ethics is that, beauty of ethics is that relevance of ethics does not stop at the examination hall itself. Importance of and beauty of ethics is that it will help you to understand your own life also. So ethics will help you to understand and live a better personal life also. You will see, after understanding some core ideas of ethics that we will discuss in our class here, you will find it out that it will help you to understand your life in a much better manner. You will be much more in tune with your own life, that what type of life you are living right now and what type of life you are supposed to be living in the future also. You aspire to live in the future as well. So that also is something that ethics is very much about. Further, ethics will help you to understand the nature of the relationships in your life as well. Since ethics, as we have seen again, you are the subject matter and the people around you are the subject matter. So it will help you to understand your relationship with other people also much better. Not only relationship in your personal life, of course your family, your friends, etc., but even in your professional life. Because as a civil servant, if you want, ultimately what would be your job as a civil servant? It is job of relationship, that you have to understand the people around you as well. So ethics will help you to understand the nature of the relationships in your life, personal relationship, business relationship, professional relationship, public relationship, etc., that in a much better manner. Not only that, I also believe that ethics will help you in your preparation of other subjects as well. So in other subjects as well, ethics will help you in the preparation of other subjects equally well, because other subjects, as we have seen, is about external world, but who is going to prepare that thing again? You are the one. So ethics, if you understand yourself well, if you understand your processes inside your mind and your body, then perhaps you will be able to understand that how to control yourself, how to manage yourself in such a manner to prepare well for those things, how to remember things better, how to study. So in all these things, as you will see in some later class, that ethics will help you a lot. That is another important thing about ethics. And last, one more thing that I will appreciate here, that ethics will help you in the future to become a good professional. Ethics will also help you to become a good professional after that, because ultimately clearing the UPSC exam is not the end of your life again. So after that, you have to, it's not the last exam that you are going to have. After you clear the UPSC exam, then after, perhaps the more important exam, more powerful, more difficult exam will come in your way. What are those exams? That how to solve the problems of governance, how to ensure that the proper governance is done. Suppose, for example, you are a police officer and you have to handle the farmers at the Delhi border against Singhu border and Gazipur border. Now, that is your exam again, that as a civil servant, you have to ensure that farmers can protest also, but they do not create, there is no untoward event, and no violent event happens there, nobody is disturbed in that case again. So, how can you ensure that? That also will be something that will become much easier for you if you understand ethics. So, importance of ethics is not only for the examination, the importance of ethics is much wider than that, much bigger than that, much more significant than what other papers may possibly be. So that is another beautiful thing about ethics that is important. So these are some of the important implications of ethics as a paper, and this is how it differs from the other part of your syllabus. So for this reason, again, I will suggest you people again that take ethics very seriously, very serious. Normally people have this tendency that, well, I know ethics. I have seen many students, many people who say that I know ethics. What is there to in ethics to know about? So I know there is no need to prepare for that again. Do not have that illusion, because that may be fatal. That may be extremely problematic for you. Because in that case, you may write very well in your exam according to your perception, but you may get very less marks also like this. So in order to score good marks again, it's very important to give a serious, consideration to ethics as your paper, as an examination. That will help you to clear the UPSC exam in a much simpler manner. So that is one important thing that we need to remember, that we need to understand about ethics. Now, next important thing that I would like to further briefly talk about is that what is the syllabus of ethics again? How is it that you are expected to prepare for this syllabus in general? Let's briefly talk about that next. So if you look at GS paper 4, the ethics paper again, then you will find that logically we can divide the syllabus of ethics into 3 parts. Though Though you have many chapters, say 5-6 chapters are there in the syllabus if you look at the syllabus, but you can appreciate here that logically you can divide that syllabus into 3 distinct parts again. So if you put up all the syllabus, every syllabus together and logically divide that into different parts, then these are 3 important parts will come out. And all the 3 parts of your syllabus will come from 3 different subjects, 3 different, you can say, stream of knowledge, the branches of knowledge again. So I will say here that UPSC has brought almost important information or content of the syllabus from different subjects, different, you can say, branches of knowledge, and they have prepared a beautiful syllabus for us. You can look at the beauty of the syllabus just now shortly. So logically we can divide the syllabus into 3 parts. First part of your syllabus, a very, very important part of your syllabus, will come from the field of philosophy. Philosophy. The first important part of your syllabus comes from the field of philosophy. You may be aware that philosophy is a very, very important branch of human knowledge. Perhaps it is the oldest branch of human knowledge. We often say that knowledge begins with philosophy. Every knowledge. Every branch of knowledge begins with philosophy. And then after slowly as the development happens, then after many of the branches gets dissociated or separated from philosophy and they become the new branch. Physics came out, chemistry came out, biology came out, all of them were philosophy earlier. Mathematics came out, psychology, sociology, economics, etc., etc. They were all earlier part of philosophy itself. Slowly they came out. So we often say that came out because of certain reasons that we may possibly discuss sometimes or the other in the philosophy class. So philosophy is the oldest branch of human knowledge. Human knowledge begins with philosophy. Not only that, knowledge, we often I often like to say that knowledge not only begins with philosophy, knowledge, human knowledge I'm talking about, knowledge ends with philosophy as well. So every subject at the end of it ultimately becomes philosophy only. So for example, even if suppose you are studying physics also and you are doing the most fundamental research in the area of physics and all, what is the highest degree, what is the maximum degree that you can possibly get in that case? Of course it will be PhD, that is doctorate in philosophy. So even physics or chemistry or mathematics, at the end of it, it becomes philosophy. So knowledge begins with philosophy and knowledge ends with philosophy. That is why we say philosophy is a very important branch of our knowledge. Now, in philosophy also, we don't have to study everything in philosophy, the whole of philosophy. That's not a philosophy topic class that you have to attend here. In philosophy also, we will be concerned basically with one very, very important branch of philosophy, and that branch is called ethics. So we will be mainly concerned with the, you can say, a subdivision of philosophy, a branch of philosophy called ethics. There are other branches of philosophies are also there. Branches like metaphysics, epistemology, ontology, logic, aesthetics. These are the different branches of philosophy are there. So we don't have to study all those branches. We won't study metaphysics or epistemology. Though I may mention epistemology a little in one of my class later, when we'll talk about enlightenment or the Renaissance philosophy, modern ethics in general. But in general, we don't have to study epistemology or metaphysics, etc. They are not the part of our syllabus. We will be mainly concerned with ethics, and we will be concerned a little with politics as well. Politics is another important branch of philosophy. A little of that also we will be studying. Now, when I say politics, then I don't mean the politics of BJP and Congress and all, the farmer protect and all. No, that's not the politics I mean. Politics means that what are the philosophical basis of governance? Because ultimately, you are going to be a part of the government. So, you must understand the philosophical basis of governance, how governance has to be done. What is the basic principles on which governance has to be done? So if you understand those basic principles, that you can understand your constitution very well, and you can understand, well, civil service also very well, and you can approach the civil service problems in a much appropriate manner. So we will study a little of politics also. As we will see shortly, ethics and politics are very closely related to each other in this sense. Because if you look at ethics, we will study that in ethics in more detail later on. If you look at ethics, then you will find that ethics is basically our understanding of right and wrong. Ethics is our understanding of right. That can be a very simple definition of ethics. What is ethics? Ethics is our understanding of right and wrong. So whenever we have to take a decision in our life that right or wrong, this is right or this is wrong, should I do this or should I do that, then some amount of ethics is involved into that. So right and wrong. So in ethics, basically we will try to study ethics or right and wrong in our personal life. That as an individual, how should I decide about rights and wrongs in our life? But at the end of it, you have to apply the same idea of right and wrong in the political system as well. So how is it that the government makes a decision about right and wrong? What are the principles on the basis of which our constitution has been formed, which tells us about rights and wrong, about this thing, that these fundamental rights are important and that should be protected, or people should not be put in jail unnecessarily, whatever you can say. All these fundamental rights or all these fundamental duties or DPSP or other part of your constitution. So all of them also define rights and wrong for us in general. So we have to apply the same idea of right and wrong into the domain of politics as well. So we will start with individual action, that what is right for me as an individual or what is right for you as an individual, and then after we will try to apply that to the whole governing system also, that how is it that our governance system has been created, how is it that our governance is so different from the Chinese government, for example, or how is it that it is different from the Russian or the, you can say, the fascist government of Hitler or Mussolini during the Second World War. So we will start ethics, right and wrong, first individual case, and then after we'll try to apply that into the case of politics as well. So that is the first important part of the syllabus that you have to prepare. I will come back to this shortly further. Now, second important part of your syllabus will be from the field of psychology. So second important part of your syllabus will come from the field of psychology. Psychology, you may be aware, is a very new branch of knowledge. It is just for the last 150 years that psychology has been existing as a new science. Before that, psychology was just a part of philosophy. It was just, so most of the initial philosophers were psychologists also, starting from Aristotle in ancient Greece to the modern people like, you can say, Immanuel Kant or John Stuart Mill, etc., David Hume, etc. They were all psychologists also. So before that, it was part of philosophy. It was a sub branch of philosophy only. It was in 1869 that psychology separated from philosophy, and it was established, it was recognized as a new science of human behavior when a psychologist called, or philosopher called, Wilhelm Wundt, he started a laboratory of psychology in the University of Leipzig in Germany. So psychology in that sense is just 150 years old as a branch of knowledge. But in the field of psychology, for the last 50 years, a lot of research has been done. And these research have some very important implication about the human life. So these researchers have told us that how to understand human life, right and wrong, the human society, human behavior, human actions and all. So these modern research, including the research in the field of biology. So we have an important, you can say, conjunction of biology and psychology called neuropsychology and all. So by taking the insight of biology and neuroscience and evolutionary, you can say, science and all, we have got some very important insight about the human knowledge or human life and all. Human life, right and wrong. So for the last 50 years in the field of psychology, lots and lots of research has been done. We in our class will have to study that also. So in psychology, we are going to study the more recent development, more recent phenomena about the good life, about the nature of human life, etc., etc. Now, in the field of psychology also, we have to study four important topics, four important subjects. First important topic of psychology that we have to study, again, the chapters you can call it, is emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence. We'll see that later, that emotional intelligence is a very, very comprehensive and very extensive system of knowledge that gives us a very important insight about the human nature, etc. We'll discuss that a lot in detail in our classes later on. Second important aspect that we have to study in psychology will be our aptitude. I like to put that also within the field of psychology also. Aptitude for civil service. What are the characteristics that you need to have in order to become a successful civil servant later on? That is called aptitude. We will talk a lot about aptitude also in our later classes, that in order to become a successful civil servant, what are those things that you need to have in you? That is the second thing. Third important chapter that we will study in psychology is attitude. Attitude is basically content of human mind. It is a systematic study of human mind in a way. So that is attitude. And finally, we'll see that a fourth chapter will be, we call that as social influence. Social influence, how other people influence our behavior, under what condition we act, do something right or wrong sometimes, because of the impact of or influence of other people around us. So that also we have to study in our course here. So in psychology, these are the four important chapters that we have to study: emotional intelligence, aptitude, attitude, and social influence. So these are the field of philosophy where we studied ethics, and here we will study the more scientific study in psychology again. Now, If you look at compare these two parts of your syllabus, the philosophical aspect of your preparation, your syllabus, and the psychological aspect of your syllabus, then you will find that both of them are very closely related to each other. Very closely related to each other in general. Because I like to say, if you ask me, for example, then philosophy, ethics particularly, what is ethics again? Ethics is essentially about what I like to call as decision making. Ethics is more about decision making. That whenever you make decisions in your life again, then ethics is always involved into that. Some amount of ethics, some theory of ethics, some idea of ethics is always a part of that. Because whenever you make, how do you make a decision? Well, whenever you make some decisions in your life, you already decide, you always decide what is right and what is wrong. So what should I do and that is the meaning of the term decision, that what should I do and what should I not do? What is appropriate and what is inappropriate? What is desirable and what is undesirable? What is doable and what is undoable again. So whenever you make decisions in your life, then you always use some idea of ethics into that. Ethics is essentially about decision making. And if you look at decision making, then we can appreciate here, we can see here that human beings are, well, we often try to define human being again. In ethics or in philosophy, we often try to define what is the meaning of human. Are we simply biological organism? Are we just like any other animal? Or are we different from other animals and all? So we often try to define what is the meaning of human being, what it means to be human. And many philosophers have given many different definitions of humanity, being human again. Now, one of the most fundamental definitions that we will talk a lot about in our later classes is that human beings are decision-making animals. So, every single moment you can say we make some decisions or the other. There are thousands and thousands of decisions that we make in our life. According to one estimate, I was reading about that in some book here. According to one recent estimate, a normal human being makes as many as 35,000 decisions every single day. Think of it. I repeat the whole thing. A normal human beings make as many as 35,000 decisions every single day. That is the number of decisions that we as a human being make. It can be a very simple decision. For example, that when you decided to watch this, you can say this lecture here, then, well, that was a decision. Should I watch this lecture or not? That was a decision. While watching this lecture again, you wear this cloth or that cloth, that was a decision. While going to your institute, for example, well, go by an auto or by metro, that was a decision. Or to eat this food or that food in your dinner or in your lunch, that was a decision. Or so every day, just imagine if you are coming from your institute, you can say home to your institute again, then should you take this path or that path? That was a decision. Should you get at 5 o'clock in the morning or 7 o'clock in the morning? That was a decision. So to continue watching this lecture till the end again, that is still a decision. To switch it off is a decision. After that, so these are the important decisions. They are simple decisions of our life. Which color clothes that you should wear, which color you should not, what should be the hairstyle that you have, what should not be. So that again is a decision. Think of it, how many decisions you make since the time you get up early in the morning. These are the simple day-to-day decisions. But some decisions are more profound decisions like academic decision, that which subject I should study. Which subject you should study, that's a very important decision that have a serious implication for your future again. Or the professional decision, for example, which profession you should, you can say, choose for yourself again, your career choice, civil service or something else. That would be a decision. Or relationship decision, that whom to make friendship with, whom to marry, whom to, well, avoid, whom to not make friendship with or relationship with. So all of these are the profound decisions in our life. So we often take a large number of simple decisions, day-to-day decisions, and some of these decisions are very profound decisions, that which subject should we study, which profession you should prepare, we should choose again for our career, and how to prepare to enter into that, which coaching to attend again, this coaching or that coaching, whom to study with again, with Sanjeev sir or somebody else, which books you study for your preparation again, this book or that book, that is still a decision. So we can say that a normal human being every single day make, according to some estimate, as many as 35,000 decisions. And it's very important that every time when you make such decisions, then some theory of ethics is always involved into that. Whether to lie or speak truth, or if you are going on the road again, so you see somebody had met with an accident, to help that person or not. That is a decision. So every moment you can make certain decision, and whenever you make some decisions like that, you always use some idea of ethics. We'll discuss in our class later on that what are those ideas, what are those theories that help us to take right decisions like this, or whatever decision that right or wrong, that is a very complicated concept question. So ethics is all about decision making. On the other hand, if you look at psychology, then psychology is not necessarily about decision making. More than decision making, I like to say that psychology is about problem solving. Psychology is more about problem solving. What is the meaning of that? Now, it is one step, you can say, ahead of philosophy part. Because once you make a decision, then that becomes a problem. Any decision, once you make a decision, then that becomes a problem. So suppose, for example, you took a decision that you will prepare for UPSC exam. The moment you took a decision that you want to be a civil servant in your life, in your career, then, well, it has created a problem. It has become a problem. And right now, you are trying to solve that problem again by studying, by trying to find out that whom to study with, which coaching to join, which teacher to depend on. So by doing all these things, you are actually trying to solve these problems. The moment you took a decision that you want to become a civil servant, that has become a problem for you. And right now, you are making all out attempt to ensure that how do you solve the problem. So psychology is more about problem solving. So decision making is ethics and problem solving is psychology. Now if you look at both of them, decision making and problem solving, both of them are very closely, very intricately related to each other. I often like to say, many philosophers have said, not only me, many philosophers have said in the past also, that these two philosophical aspects, ethics and psychology, knowledge. Ethics is about the right and wrong, and it is about the knowledge. Both of them are two sides of the same coin. Both of them talk about the two aspects of the same real life that we are actually living right now. So we often say, you must have heard, there is a beautiful quotation that some philosopher had said that ethics without knowledge, knowledge of human being, ethics without knowledge is useless. That is the fact again. Just imagine a situation, suppose there is a person who is very good in ethics, who knows every principle of ethics, every idea of right and wrong. So he is always able to take a right decision, but he is not able to implement that decision appropriately. So he takes a right decision, but that right decision is never implemented because he is not so good in psychology. Psychology is about knowledge of human being, how to manage human being, including ourselves. That how to manage ourselves, because ultimately to take a decision, you have to manage yourself, you have to manage other people around you as well. So psychology is about knowledge of managing individual, managing human beings again, including yourself and the other people around you as well. So suppose there is a person who is very good in ethics, but who is not so good in psychology. He will take a right decision, but that right decision will never be implemented. So it will be useless thing again. So decision taken but not implemented is as good as not. So we often say that, you can say, ethics without knowledge of psychology is useless. On the other hand, the knowledge of human being without ethics can be extremely dangerous. That's not useless, that is dangerous. Why so? Because such people, there are some people, just imagine a situation that there is a person, suppose, who is very good in it, you can say in psychology, he understands human behavior very well. He can manage, he can control people as much as he can, but his right and wrong is problematic. So he make a wrong decision and he will be able to implement that wrong decision in appropriate manner. And wrong decision implemented appropriately can be extremely dangerous. Because, well, wrong thing you are doing efficiently, right thing you are doing efficiently can be extremely good, wrong thing being done inefficiently may be okay, but wrong thing done efficiently can be extremely problematic, extremely dangerous. So such people who are good in this but bad in that, they are very dangerous people. Think of it. Take the example of, say, Hitler. Hitler was very good in that, of course. He was very good in understanding human behavior. How to control, how to manage, when to use force, when to use propaganda, when to use persuasion, etc. To understand, to control, to manage, to manipulate human behavior again. He was very good in that. We'll talk about all these things, propaganda, etc. in the psychology class later on. So he was very good in that, but his idea of right and wrong was problematic. So he did the wrong in such a large scale that, well, we all human beings suffered so much. Holocaust happened because of that thing. You must have heard about Holocaust. So Holocaust was a condition in which situation thing in which more than 6 million Jews were killed by Hitler and his army just because they were Jews. No other crime. So just because they were Jews, the young people, the simple common businessman, normal people, children, women, old people and all, 6 million Jews. Think of it, 60 lakh. 6 million Jews were killed by him just because they were Jews. And almost an equal number of non-Jews also, almost 6 million. Non-Jews also, people like Slavs or Romans or the Pygmies or the deformed people, Gypsies, so they were considered to be inferior people by him. So he eliminated all of them. He tried to eliminate all of them. So almost 6 million Jews and almost equal number of 6 million non-Jews. 12 million people he killed in that Holocaust again. Think of it. So if you forget about ethics and all, then don't you realize that it is a huge engineering achievement again to kill so many people in such a small span of time, just in few months. 80% of the people that he killed just in 11 months in 1942. So, killing so many people and disposing their body of, well, was that not an engineering? Forget about ethics and all. Is that not a great achievement of engineering? It was actually. So, he was very efficient in that. But, well, how bad it became for the world. So, we see that knowledge of psychology without ethics can be extremely dangerous. Hitler is an example of that. On the other hand, take the case of Gandhi. Gandhi was also very good in that. Gandhi also understood human psychology very, very well. Very few people in last 100 years could understand the human psychology the way Gandhi did. He has a great, you can say, insight about the human psychology in there. So he was great in that, but his understanding of right and wrong also was very good. Because of that, he did right at such a large scale and such an efficient, magnanimous manner, fantastic manner, that he became one of the most important person and most respected personality of the 20th century world. He became inspiration for a large number of people, including the people like Nelson Mandela, people like Martin Luther King. So, how to fight injustice without creating bloodshed? How to fight injustice without killing people? Without violence. So he became an exemplar of all these things again. So his understanding of right and wrong was also good, and his understanding of psychology was also good. He became a great person. Hitler, his understanding of right and wrong was bad, and his knowledge of his human being was phenomenal. He became so bad. So we often say that the ethics without knowledge of human behavior is useless, and knowledge of human behavior without ethics can be extremely dangerous. So thus, in order to understand the life appropriately, in order to be a successful person, we need to understand both of these two aspects. That is why UPSC expects all of you to understand both of them as well. Both of them, philosophical aspect and the psychological aspect, both of them are, in a way, two sides of the same coin. They are the two aspects of the same thing. The way you understand the life, the way you understand the human behavior, human society in that sense. So that is the meaning of the term. These two things are there. Now, if you ask me, many of my students ask me that, sir, can you tell me a single word that can describe all of these things in general? Then I can say here, the single word that can describe all of these things together is that single word can be that ethics, only thing that ethics requires you. Everything, all the two aspects that we talked about earlier, both of them require only one thing from you. And that one thing is think. This is a single word that can describe the whole requirement of ethics for you. Think. That ethics requires us that whenever you plan to do something, then stop for a moment and think. What are you doing? If you stop for a moment and think, then that stoppage and that gap that is there between your, you can say, intention to do something and your action at the end of it, that gap is what we call the thinking. And that gap is where everything is there. Ethics is just about that. So only one thing that ethics requires us, that every time when you do something, then do not do that impulsively. Stop for a moment and think that what you are doing. And if you do so, then you fulfill the most basic requirement of ethics. Next, this thinking, as far as we will talk a lot about thinking in our class, that what is the meaning of thinking, what do we mean by thinking, how to think well, etc., etc. So all of these things we will discuss in our class during the course of our syllabus again. But as far as thinking is concerned, a lot of us, many of us have many misconceptions about ourselves that, well, we are thinking animal. We often think that we are thinking animal. We often say that, okay, we are thinking animal, we think a lot. But in reality, thinking is one of the most uncommon thing in human being. In this respect, again, I remember a beautiful quotation of one of my favorite author, well, G.B. Shaw. Mark Twain, one of my favorite author, Mark Twain. He had said somewhere that 2% people actually think. 2%, think of it. 2% people actually think. Only 2%. 3% people think that they think. Well, they do not think, but they have this illusion. They think that they are thinking. So 3% people think that they think. And 95% people would rather die than to think. Think of it. This is a beautiful statement quotation. So he said 2% people actually think, 3% people think that they think, and 95% of the people would rather die than to think. Thinking is so difficult. Thinking is so uncommon among the common people. Given a choice, 95% people, according to him, well, you don't have to take the data here as such, just an idea, you get it here. So according to him, that given a choice, 95% people would prefer death rather than to think what they are doing. Take any example. Just think about those people who stormed the Capitol in America. That did they think that what they are doing? Or even in Lal Killa on 26 January, those people who were protesting against the government against farm law, what they did in Lal Killa again, that did they think that what they are doing again, will that help their cause and all? Most often they simply become so agitated, they blindly do whatever they feel like doing it, rather than they think that what is it that they are doing in that situation. So that is how you can say thinking is so difficult. Ethics requires only one thing for us, that be among those 2% people who actually think. They are the people who change the world. They are the people who move the world. Other people other people become history, and they are the people, they make history, they move the history, they shape the history. Ethics requires us to be among those 2% people. So that is what is the ultimate requirement of ethics in general. So these two are the two important part of your syllabus, and for these two part of syllabus I will not recommend you any book as such. Nothing is required. Whatever we will be doing in our class, that will be more than sufficient. Nothing else will be required. We'll see that shortly. Nothing will be required. Then after, there is a third part of your syllabus, that is application of these two things in administration and governance. Of course, you are going to be a civil servant and an administrator. So how can you apply your knowledge of psychology and philosophy in order to become a good civil servant? That is what this third part is all about. Of course, that is what is the ultimate purpose and all. So this is application part. And since this is an application part, so I will recommend you in this part to read some books or newspaper. For this part, even newspapers may not be required. Whatever you are reading newspaper, for other paper, that will be enough for this also. You should be aware of the new education policy. You should be aware. These things are something that you already do in your current affairs. Nothing extra will be required. But for this part, something extra may be required. So, for example, well, a few years ago, Government of India had brought the surrogacy regulation bill. Now, we will discuss in our class the ethical issues involved in the question of surrogacy. That we will discuss in our class. But what was the provision of that bill that you may have to read in the newspapers or magazine? That we will provide also whatever has been done in the past. So we will provide that as study material here. Or for example, but that you have to read again. That will not be something that we will discuss maybe in much detail in our classrooms and all. Or suppose, for example, a few years ago, the Government of India had brought about the whistleblower protection bill. So in our class, we will discuss the idea of whistleblowing or the ethical issues involved in the question of whistleblowing. That we will discuss in our class. But what are the provisions of that bill that you may have to study yourself again? We will provide study material for that. That is how our class and study material will complement each other. Or for example, 6-7 years ago, UPA government had brought about a Sexual Harassment Act in India again, at Workplace Act. You must be aware of that. So we will discuss in our class the ethical issues involved in the cases of sexual harassment. What is the meaning of sexual harassment? What are the important ethical questions involved in that? We will discuss that in our class here. But the provision of that bill, we will have to study from the newspapers, magazines, or the study material that we may provide you at the time. So that is how you can say this is a part of the syllabus where you may need to read some books, some study material, or some extra reading may be required for that. I believe that from this part again, one thing that I suggest often to my student, read the, you can say, fourth report of, we'll talk about that later on, fourth report of the second ARC, Administrative Reform Commission. That is one thing that I always recommend to my student, either short form or summary of that or the whole report. You can download that from the internet again from Ministry of Personnel website, Government of India. Fourth report of the second ARC, that is the ethics in governance. So that is the only study material that I will recommend you in that case. Otherwise, nothing else is required. Whatever we will be doing in our class, that will be more than sufficient, more than enough. So that is how we understand the ethics in general, the syllabus of ethics in general. Now, before we end, at the end of it, I will have to talk about one more thing here. that how to score good marks in ethics. As I told you, to score good marks in ethics is easy. It's not very difficult. What are the requirements that you need to have, you need to fulfill in order to score very well in ethics and all? Now, that's an interesting thing, an important thing. I believe that in ethics, in order to score very good in ethics, very well in ethics, you need to fulfill only and only two requirements. What are they? First important requirement, first thing that I expect that you already have, and second is something that we will work upon in our class here. So you need to have two important requirements. First requirement is that in order to score very good marks in ethics, first requirement is that you should have a respectable command over the language. You will have to you will need to have a respectable command, a good command over the language. In your case, of course, that will be English language. English is very important. You should have a good command over the English language. Remember, English is important for other subjects also. Of course, you are going to write your history or geography and polity also in English language only. So English is important for every subject. But in ethics, English becomes even more important. Why so? Because many ethical issues are very abstract. So something that is so abstract, if you have to write that into the concrete language, you need to have a respectable command over the language. Language is very important. Now, when I say language is very important, then I don't mean that your language to be very poetic language, Shakespeare's language. No, that's not what I mean. What I mean here is that good language must fulfill two important criteria. First of all, it must be very clear. Clarity is the crucial thing. Your ideas must be very, very clear. What you want to write and what you actually write. What is there in your mind and what is there on your book, on your notebook again. Both of them may be more or less same. There should be clarity in the thought, clarity in the language, clarity in the words that you are writing. That's one thing. But more importantly, your language must be very, very simple. Do not write very complex language. I have seen some students that they have this tendency to make their answer very complex in order to show off that yes, I know English so well. No, don't show off your language, linguistic skill. Because examiner is not interested in knowing your linguistic skill. Some students have this tendency to write very complex answer. I have seen one student was there. Once he wrote an answer to me, showed an answer to me. In that answer, he had written one complete paragraph in one page in one sentence. Think of it. You are writing such a long sentence like one page in one sentence. Well, UPSC booklet is still smaller, that you have left margin and right margin. But then also if you are writing such a long sentence, then it is going to be a big problem for you. What are problems in writing a big sentence? Problem is that if you write a big sentence, the first problem will be that you will lose the track of your thought. The reader will not be able to understand where did you start and where did you end. That track will be lost. But more importantly, if you are writing long sentences, then you will be more likely to make more grammatical mistakes. That you should avoid. Don't make many grammatical mistakes. Don't write long sentences. Break it down into smaller sentences. Don't use many conjunctions. Use full stop rather than, you can say, some colon or something like this one. So simple sentence, small sentence, a simple word. Don't use very difficult jargons. Don't use Shashi Tharoor's language. That may be great to enjoy sometimes, but yes, writing an answer should not be like Shashi Tharoor's language. It must be common language that we normally speak in day-to-day language and all. Because if you write such a difficult and complex word, that the examiner has to see a dictionary in order to understand what you have written, then you are going to be in trouble. Don't write very difficult words. Don't write Shakespeare's language. Don't write Shashi Tharoor's language. Write your own language that you speak in a day-to-day language, day-to-day affairs and all. Language that you read in the newspapers and all. Simple language. That is the meaning of the term language. So that is the first important requirement that you need to fulfill here. So if your language is good, be happy. And if your language is not so good, then work upon that. That's a very, very important thing that I will suggest you. Then after, in order to score very good marks in ethics, the second requirement is also very important that we will work upon in our class here. And what is that second requirement? Second requirement also is what I like to call as the language of ethics. Language of ethics. You know, every subject has its own terminology, its own technical words again that has a specific meaning in that particular subject. So you have to understand what is that terminology, what is that language of ethics. For example, every subject had its own words, its own linguistic, you can say, the background. Suppose, for example, if you use the term force. If you use the term force, then just think of it. A physicist, when he uses the term force, and when a military man or policeman uses the force, then are they meaning the same thing? Of course not. For a physicist, the word force means something very different. And for a, you can say, the policeman, force will be very different. Power, for example, for a physics, power is very different, and for social, you can say sociology, for example, power will be very different. Or work will be very different for a physicist, and work may be very, very different for us again. So same word can be very different for some people, and it may be very different for other people as well. So in ethics also we have certain language, and that language you have to be well aware of, and that is the domain of our class. So in our class we are not going to teach you ethics, because remember one thing that I told you in the beginning itself, ethics is something that everybody knows. We cannot teach ethics. We don't have to teach anybody ethics. That's why when I talk to some other people, some of my friends who are not in the field of civil service, and I tell them that I teach ethics to my students, then they laugh at me. What do you teach ethics in there? Do you tell them that don't lie, speak truth, don't break your promise, don't cheat, don't kill people? Are these things that you tell your students and all? No, these things are everybody knows. Nobody has to be taught these things again, that speak truth, don't lie, don't break your promise, etc. No, that's not what we teach again. I tell my friend what I teach is the language of ethics, not ethics as such, because ethics everybody knows. Human beings are ethical by nature. We'll see that much more detail in the classes that we will have later on. So language of ethics, that's a very, very important thing. And what is that language of ethics? In this language of ethics, I believe that this language of ethics it consists of around 100 or so different ideas or concepts, or maybe even words. 100 or so different ideas, concepts, or words, etc. So this is what consists of the language of ethics. Words, for example, I just give you a small example of that. You can say the summary of that maybe. Words like law, rules, regulation, conscience, happiness, utility, or welfare, or development, liberty, consent, dignity, autonomy, duty, choice, responsibility, human rights, natural rights, or so many such things like virtue, vice, or courage, or self-awareness, self-control, self-confidence, trustworthiness, commitment, conscientiousness, innovation, adaptability, empathy, compassion, diversity, leadership, accountability, responsibility, etc., etc. These are the very, very important words that you have to understand. Solidarity. So they are very, very important words that you have to understand and use them as a part of your answer. My purpose in this class again is not to teach you ethics. My purpose is to teach you the language of ethics. Once you understand that language, then I can assure you that virtually any question that UPSC can ask from you, you should be able to answer that. Because almost every topic, whether you talk about political issue like farm law, or can say urbanization, or migration of the people, or you can say the new education policy, almost everything from ethical point of view, it can be understood just by using those 100 or so different words. So we will discuss all these words in much detail in our class. In all these concepts that we will discuss in our class, I will make you to write some small paragraph again. Write that down again. Try to understand these concepts very, very well. And then after, try to use these concepts to understand your life also, or the events that happen around you. In my class, I will give you a large number of many examples again. Examples of my personal life, examples from my neighborhood, in our society, from the newspapers, from the film, from the stories, from the mythologies, etc., Ramayana, Mahabharata, wherever it is. So I will give you many such examples from different fields and all, so that you can understand these concepts appropriately. I will expect you people to find a similar example also in your life also. When you read the newspaper, try to understand the same news from the point of view of the ethical ideas that we will be discussing in the class. So if you are able to relate the classroom with the real life outside the classroom, then be sure your preparation is complete, and it's very easy for you to score around 150 or 160 marks also in ethics. That is very easy. It does not require lots of study, as I told you. It does not require lots of books to study, lots of newspapers and all. It just requires that you should understand those 100 or so different ideas. And once you understand them, you are able to write that, then after you see that your preparation is over once and for all. You don't have to repeat yourself, revise yourself, update yourself, etc. Understanding once and having some command over that language that we will try to elaborate, develop in our class, evolve in our class, that is it. That is all about the preparation of ethics and all. So this is what I think we will be doing for you here. Of course, we will provide you some study material also related to these topics and all, along with some new recent events that, as I told you, the Surrogacy Regulation Act, some laws, certain bills, etc. of the Government of India as well. So that is how what ethics is, that is how ethics differs from other subject, and this is what is the scope of ethics, and this is how you can prepare ethics well. This is how you can get very, very good marks in ethics in general. So I think that's all for me.